Welcome to Be Bold and Break the Mold, a podcast where you will meet people that broke free from society's norms and limitations and now live a free and inspired life. I'm your host, Ursula Williams, and today I will tell you about my life and why I created this podcast. So, lean back and enjoy this new episode of Be Bold and Break the Mold. All of you who visited my blog would know that I was born in Berlin, Germany, and spent the first 30 years of my life in this beautiful city. You will also have read that I'm an innate traveler with a liking of adventure. Let's put it this way, I've never been afraid to take risks. I was a girl that climbed the highest trees, took neck-breaking rides with my scooter, roller skates or sled. I was a happy child. We didn't have much because unemployment was still very high in Germany at that time. And my dad, who by profession was a butcher and chef, could not work in his profession. There were just not enough restaurants. Nobody had money to go and have dinner. We were happy to have food on the table. So, what did he do? He worked in the construction industry, which was okay. We got by. We had what I consider a good living. We didn't have any fancy toys or fancy clothes. We had hand-me-downs, played with clay marbles in the street. But you know what? We were free. We played all day outside and only went home when the streetlights came on. But my teenage years were not that happy. I went through many years of sexual abuse and saw no other way out than to plunge into early marriage. So I got married with 16, was mother with 17. I had a beautiful little daughter that I called Munya, which means my greatest wish. My marriage did not last very long, 14 years to be exact, and ended with my husband dousing me in gasoline. I filed for divorce and made sure that he will never ever have this opportunity again to turn the life of my daughter and myself into terror. So I decided I am going to leave Germany, leave my family and friends and a career in marketing, to live without fear, without having to look over my shoulder or to dread answering the phone. So I decided to make a new start on a small island in the Caribbean. On the 7th of April 1984, with 2 suitcases and a bag full of dreams, I started my journey into a new life. A friend of mine who had lived on the island before a junta of communists had taken it over had returned and offered to share a furnished house with me. Well, I was so happy. I thought, well, I'm on the right way now. Nothing could go wrong. But my mind changed as soon as I entered the living room. The window panes were covered in grime, and the drapes must have served as mopping cloth in earlier days. There was a fully fitted kitchen and a stove I prefer not to describe. Cabinets that served as waste trucks for swarms of roaches, 3 cups, 2 without a handle, a rusty spoon and a few forks, some chipped plates and no water. My bedroom consisted of a termite-eaten wardrobe and a queen-size bed. Well, it was a rusty frame with 4 wooden planks and a stained mattress. But then again, growing up as a child after the war, I was used to challenges. So I decided to shake off my disappointment and give everything a good cleaning. With a bucket at hand, I headed for the bathroom. Well, what was supposed to be the bathroom? Anyhow, since there was no cleaner, I had to settle for wiping everything down with clear water. Oh yes, and then it dawned me, we had no water. I'm sure you can imagine how I felt. I was close to tears. And then suddenly, Peter, a friend of the landlord, arrived with 2 bags full of water bottles. not enough for the cleaning, but just enough to wash my face and hands. Well, he had promised to provide me with a small water tank early next morning. And let me tell you, he did keep his promise. He showed up with a 100-gallon water tank on the back of a small pickup truck. Was I happy to see that? Well, of course I was. But how was he planning to unload it? Well, he and his friends had a great plan for that. They leaned two unsteady-looking planks against the back of the truck and pushed. First it seemed to work, but then one of the boards broke, and so did the plastic tank. But not to worry, it can be fixed. Do you have a piece of soap, Ushi? Peter called over to me. And I honestly have to tell you, I thought I was in some sort of comedy. My attempt to try telling him that a piece of soap would not stop the leak and would definitely make the water no longer fit for consumption, he just shrugged off. Welcome to the Caribbean. I didn't stay long at that house, and after moving a few times, found a small house in the rural area. It was in desperate need of repair, had no furniture and not even a kitchen. But it was very affordable and it was promising. So I decided to take it. For the first few weeks, I slept on an air mattress and warmed the water for my coffee with my iron, believe it or not. But then again, 2 months later, my van arrived from Germany, which contained my household items and a few tools that I had intended to sell, since they were very sought after on the island. Anyhow, a German friend had promised me to get me a waiver for the duty and tax, so I give her a call. To be told that, yeah, it can be done, but it has to be issued in her name. Well, I might be many things, but stupid is not one of them. So anyhow, I scraped my last dollars I had, all my savings, and went down to the pier trying to clear my van. And I found out that I was $3,000 short. Now it really hit me. Now I was really down. I thought, well, I can't make it. Nope. So I headed for a restaurant of somebody from Austria that I had just recently met and decided I'll get drunk. But he noticed my despair and we talked for a while, and then he offered me the $3,000 plus another $5,000 so that I can make a living until I would be able to sell the van. You can imagine how stunned I was. The man only knew me a few weeks, and here he goes, offers me $8,000 without any guarantee. Anyhow, so I headed back down to the pier, got my van, unloaded my treasures, and immediately put a sign in the back window for sale. It only took me 3 days, and then the van was sold. I was so happy. I paid back my new friend and had the money to fix up the house. I was lucky to find a reasonable workman, and he was very skilled. He rebuilt a kitchen for me, repaired all the doors, and even did the plumbing. One of my neighbors organized a used bed with mattress from the medical school for me, so my nights on the floor were finally over. 2 weeks later, when all the repairs were done and the house was painted, I sat comfortable on my self-made plywood sofa and enjoyed my first properly brewed cup of coffee. I'm sure you can imagine I felt like a queen. But you mustn't think that my troubles were over. Not by a long shot. I could not find any employment, since I was deemed overqualified. Never heard that word before, but so it is. So I decided to take any job I could find I needed to survive. I walked for miles every day to save the bus money, so that I could buy food for my dog and me. Oh yeah, I had bought a German Shepherd to help me through my loneliness. I missed my daughter terribly, but I knew I could not bring her in this situation. I needed a steady job first. So here I was, counting the dollars, buying bags of Beckerneck for my dog and myself. My Ibiza boots had more holes than soles, but I could not afford to buy new shoes. That was just not in the budget. During my search for a job, I met a lot of interesting women, and we all shared our concern about the really rampant violence and rape on the island. And so we quickly decided to form a group. And we called ourselves a group of concerned women. Soon after our founding of the group, we were really known throughout the island. We were a force to reckon with. Nobody tried to upset us. We were quoted so many times in the daily and weekly newspapers on the island that soon everybody seemed to be afraid of what we had to say. I became the president, and through my 2 terms of presidency, we were able to create a weekly radio program. We started a crisis hotline for abused women, children, and victims, or better, people with HIV and AIDS infection, which was at that time really a crisis, and not only on the island. So I also served on the AIDS Council of the government, represented the island in conferences throughout the Caribbean region, basically was very busy. But it did not pay my bills, as beautiful as it is to help. So I kept on searching, but by now I was well known. People looked at me, and eventually I broke the ice. Most small companies on the island hired me as their marketing consultant. I also found a new husband, got married, and was able to offer my daughter a new home. I had 2 more children and was hoping that everything would go smoothly now. I would have finally found my home to be happy in. And then it happened again. I'm just not lucky with men, to tell you the truth. So my second marriage failed and I was alone again. I was lucky in business, or so I thought. Well, just after my husband had left, I was offered a job from one of the newly established offshore banks as an office manager. The pay was good and I was able to choose my own stuff. And about a year into the job, I began to travel extensively because I had to meet my bosses all over the United States and in Canada. So it seemed very interesting, but as a single mother, you can imagine that's not very easy. Anyhow, everything seemed to be good. Money came in on a steady basis and I had regular working hours, so I was pretty happy. Until then, one day, I got a very strange phone call from one of the bank's clients asking me about a new investment opportunity I had never heard of. So, well, of course, I called my bosses to find out, educate myself, but only got very fishy answers. So my alarm bells were ringing. Even thought just a month ago we had gotten insurance coverage from Lloyd's of London against bank fraud and mail fraud, so we should have been okay because they checked our books really carefully. Anyhow, cutting a long story short, my bosses regretted hiring me very soon, and they have now a very long time to think about their get-rich-quick scam. Anyhow, I went through tough times. I got death threats, I had cut brake lines, and countless months working with the Royal Mounted Police, FBI, and even Interpol. But despite all the trouble, I never regretted that I took the action and put my bosses away. The only thing that I regret up to today is that I was unable to find the money and return it to the bank's clients. Anyhow, so I found myself once again without a job. So I restarted my own business again as a marketing consultant, contacted all my former clients and was lucky that they would still have me. I was also able to top off my income by helping a friend of mine building her tour company. So I acted as her lead guide and trained her staff. While I was going around the island now on a regular basis, I really got interested in the island's mythology, early history, and early inhabitants. I contacted the tribes that were still in existence, found a really interesting historian on the island. We soon became friends. And now I explored the rainforest a lot more than I ever did before. Did not just look for herbs. No, I was looking for artifacts and was lucky to find the remains of an old settlement. Well, I contacted the plantation owner, invited two well-renowned archaeologists to come and join me on the island to do a proper archaeological excavation of the site. I also asked the two tribal leaders to come and do a blessing for our new dig. Fired up by what we found and making the connection to the old tribes, the landowner agreed with me to develop the area into a tourism attraction. We decided to create a museum's village. I drew up the plans and even got all planning approvals and was just about to find financing through the government investment bank. But then a hurricane struck the island and destroyed 2/3 of all houses, wiped out the infrastructure, agriculture, and tourism industry. Things really looked bad. We had no water for weeks, electricity was gone for 9 months, and unemployment was just rampant, with the shops and businesses being destroyed by the storm. There was no job for me. Who needed a marketing consultant when there was no market? Creating jewelry was the only option. So I started again, not knowing when next I would be able to sell any of it. But no problem. Giving up is not in my vocabulary. And then soon, the cruise ships returned to the island and brought us some tourists. But with the agriculture destroyed, there were no spices that could be sold. It used to be one of the major souvenir items. There were also no materials to make any crafts, at least not the traditional ones. So everybody was desperate and ready to give up. That's when, finally, some aid agencies visited the island and were looking for some tutors, designers, or local crafters that could teach the community in creating new and innovative souvenirs. Well, that was my hour. It was my call. So, of course, I applied. I then was able to create and conduct workshops for USAID, UNICEF, Carana, and many other agencies. Soon I became the tutor for crafts, candles, jewelry, and a hell of a lot more. My income increased and was secure, and soon after, my former clients returned because business was picking up. I had a steady income again, was even offered contracts that would last for years to come. So things were looking up for me and could have been nice. But you know what? After my children had left to study abroad, I felt lonely. Life had become monotone, and I decided to return to Germany. For the first few months, I traveled throughout Europe, visited ancient sites in North America, Ireland, and Scotland. I have to admit that it was Scotland that inspired me to start to write and pursue a career as an author. Am I a good writer? Do my stories inspire? Well, let me quote my editor and some of my readers to answer these questions. So, here we go. Ursula's undying love for Scotland and everything mystical shows in the description of the Scottish scenery, the forest, lochs and glens. Her narratives are so vivid that the reader can not only see the sights, but feel and almost smell them as well. Her characters are so lifelike, likable, and feared that the readers easily recognize them to their speaking patterns and action. Or, one of my readers, from Glasgow, Alan McLennan. A fantastic book to read, and it does take you into the world of magic, and you start to believe in magic again. I don't read many books, but this has to be the best ever. And another one from Scotland, Stephen McSporran. I do not normally write reviews, but felt I should in this instance. Why? Well, this is the first book in a long time that took me back to the novels of my younger years. It is to me a book that adults and children will both enjoy, full of interesting characters, a few whom you will want to have further adventures with. But most importantly and simply, the fact it is just really enjoyable to read. Or one of my readers from Germany, translated by Amazon. Not by me. Gabi. I myself do not know the fantasy genre, but bought this book as a gift recommendation, and it was a great success. The recipient was absolutely enthusiastic about the imagination and the entertaining story, as well as the lively writing style and the ability of the author to take the reader to a mythical medieval Scotland on the first few pages. This shows once again that you should give even less known writers a chance. And the last one I received was from the United States, Ria, thank you. And she writes, I truly enjoy the story of Amanda, the story of her finding her true self and all the magical creatures that will forever be part of her life. I love all the magical creatures that came to life to fight with Amanda and her friends to bring the light back into a dark world. So you guys, now you know a little bit more about me, and I hope you enjoyed my little story. There is, of course, a lot more to tell. You can imagine it was just a little glimpse into my life. I'm planning to write a biography, and I hope you'll give it a chance. You're going to come by and have a look at it one of these days. But for now, I hope to welcome you again to my next podcast, and I promise you to keep it interesting, to keep inviting people that broke the mold and created a life for themselves, a life interesting and creative. So, if you would like to listen to me again, subscribe to my podcast, follow my blog, or even read my books. They are available on Amazon, and the series is named Do You Believe in the World of Magic? And start with book number 1, The Sword of Light. So, until we meet again, I say goodbye, and I wish you all to stay healthy and happy. Bye-bye for now.